League of Legends has over 160 champions, gods that forge stars, demons that eat emotions, and cosmic dragons that created entire galaxies. But buried in that roster are champions whose lore power level is so embarrassingly low, it's honestly a miracle they're still alive. Today I'm ranking the 10 most useless champions in League of Legends lore, and we're starting with Demacia's golden boy, Garen. Garen is the single most decorated soldier in Demacia, sword captain of the Dauntless Vanguard, peak physical conditioning, years of brutal training, unwavering discipline. He is everything a human warrior can possibly be, and that's exactly the problem. Peak human in a world where Aurelian Sol can sneeze and delete a continent is like being the best checkers player at a chess tournament. Impressive in a vacuum, completely meaningless in context. His greatsword has 0 magical properties, no enchantments, no divine blessing, no ancient runes carved into the blade. It is a large metal stick. He swings the large metal stick very well. That's his entire kit. But here's the thing that makes Garen's position truly hilarious. Demacia as a nation is structurally built around one core admission: regular humans cannot match mages one-on-one. Their entire military doctrine, the Petricite walls, the rigid formations, the sheer numbers, all of it exists because humans lose to magic users in a fair fight. Garen isn't just a soldier, he's the mascot of that admission, dressed in shiny armor. Sylas proved this. One mage with a chain dismantled everything Garen's entire army represents. The gap between best human soldier and person with actual powers is not closable by training harder. Garen wins through organization, tactics, and having thousands of soldiers behind him, which is admirable. But it also means he's bringing a very organized spreadsheet to a supernova fight. He lands at number 10, because at least he has that army backing him up. Most people on this list can't even say that. Miss Fortune. Let's be clear about something. Miss Fortune is not incompetent. She's arguably one of the most impressive purely human characters in all of Runeterra. She orchestrated the downfall of Gangplank, a pirate king with supernatural backing, through intelligence, manipulation, and information networks. She now controls Bilgewater, commanding thousands of sailors and an entire fleet. That's genuinely incredible. It also means absolutely nothing, because Bilgewater isn't a normal city. Pike, an undead vengeful spirit who literally cannot be killed, stalks the docks every night with a hit list that writes itself. Nautilus, a corrupted deep-sea ghost fused with a diving suit, drags entire ships underwater for fun, and those are just the ones with names. The ocean surrounding Bilgewater is home to god-touched entities, sea spirits connected to Nagakaburos, the literal goddess of the deep, and creatures that make Kraken look like goldfish. Miss Fortune's answer to all of this? 2 pistols. Regular, non-magical, bullet-firing pistols. Her entire strategy is being the smartest person in the room. And honestly, it works. It works really well. Right up until the room contains something that doesn't care about being outthought. You can't negotiate with Pike. You can't outmaneuver a tidal god. You can't shoot the ocean. She ranks above Garen because a fleet and an intelligence network are objectively more resources than one guy and his sword. But individually, she's a woman with 2 guns politely asking the supernatural to respect her authority. But at least Miss Fortune has an army backing her up. The next guy on our list doesn't even have that. Graves. Malcolm Graves is a career criminal, a gunslinger, and one of the most stubbornly alive humans in all of Runeterra. No magic, no enhancements, no divine blessing, just a stolen shotgun and an attitude problem. And yeah, about that shotgun. His signature weapon, the thing that defines him as a champion, was stolen from the prison warden during his escape from the locker. It's a great shotgun, genuinely. But it is still just a shotgun. Its power ceiling tops out, it kills humans efficiently. That's it. That's the whole resume. Graves spent years locked up in the locker and eventually escaped through sheer criminal cunning, which sounds impressive until you realize his greatest documented achievement is breaking out of a regular human prison, not escaping a void rift, not outsmarting a demon, a prison. With locks and guards. Here's where it gets funny. Graves operates in Bilgewater, the same region as sea witches, undead revenants, and crime lords who've made pacts with actual demons. His answer to all of them is the same: shoot it more. And look, that works on humans. It works significantly less well on things that are already dead. The man's defining trait is refusing to die through pure stubbornness, and honestly, respect. That's an admirable quality in a human being, but it's completely irrelevant to entities that operate outside the concept of death entirely. You can't out-stubborn a god. You can't reload your way past the supernatural. Graves ranks just above misfortune because he has fewer resources. No fleet, no army, just a partner named Twisted Fate and a single shotgun. The distinction between 8 and 9 is essentially how many normal humans can you command before the gods show up. But if Graves is limited by his weapon, wait until you meet someone whose entire power is a really nice rifle and a badge. Caitlin. Caitlin Karaman is basically Batman. Wealthy family, brilliant detective, top-tier equipment, unwavering sense of justice. She's Piltover's finest enforcer and arguably the best investigator in the entire city. There's just one small problem. Batman fights crime in Gotham. Caitlin fights crime in a world where demons exist. Her weapon is a one-of-a-kind Hextech rifle. Beautiful craftsmanship, excellent engineering, and yes, it's powered by Hextech, which means it's technically magic-infused. But let's be honest about what it actually does. It shoots things from far away with exceptional precision. That's incredible against criminals. That's significantly less incredible against a void creature that eats dimensions for breakfast. And here's the thing. Caitlin lives in Piltover, the most technologically advanced city on the planet. Hextech exists. Genuinely powerful magical technology that can reshape matter and bend the laws of physics. And while Caitlin wields a Hextech weapon, she's using it as a fancy sniper rifle, not channeling it to warp reality. She works for the institution that governs the city, sure, but institutional power and personal power are very different things. Her enforcer badge does not stop a demon. Her arrest warrant means nothing to an ascended god warrior. Her entire skill set is detection and deduction. She solves crimes, investigates conspiracies, follows evidence trails. Those skills are legitimately incredible when the threat is a human smuggling ring in the Undercity. They become somewhat less useful when the threat doesn't leave fingerprints, because it doesn't have fingers. Her whole Nemesis arc revolves around Vi and Undercity crime, human-scale problems. She's optimized for exactly the one category of threat that matters least in Runeterra's actual power landscape. She ranks above Graves because Piltover's resources are more sophisticated than Bilgewater's, but a detective with a Hextech rifle is still just a detective with a rifle. But if you think Caitlin is out of her depth, wait until you meet someone from the same city who traded sanity for explosives. Jinx is genuinely talented. Let's get that out of the way right now. Formerly known as Powder, she's a human orphan who clawed her way up from nothing in Zaun's Undercity and became one of the most creative bomb makers the city has ever seen. No magic, no formal training, just a deeply unhinged woman who got extraordinarily good at building things that explode, and who happened to get her hands on some very dangerous tools along the way. And her explosions are no joke. She's shimmer enhanced, giving her heightened physical abilities beyond a normal human. She reverse-engineered Hextech technology and strapped it to her weapons. That Finale rocket, built around an actual Hex crystal. Her bombs can level buildings. Among regular humans, that's terrifying. In Zaun specifically, it's kind of Tuesday. Here's the problem. Zaun is a city where people casually inject themselves with Shimmer, a purple chemical ooze that grants superhuman strength and durability. Jinx got a dose of that same power, sure, but the arms race in her own neighborhood is constantly escalating. She's bringing better explosives and stolen Hextech to a fight where her neighbors are chemically enhanced super soldiers who can punch through walls with their bare hands. Her mental instability makes her unpredictable, sure, but unpredictability is not a superpower. Chaos is not strength, it's just chaos. And creative destruction has a hard ceiling. And even with Hextech in the mix, that ceiling is still large explosion, not challenge to a god. The effort-to-threat ratio here is completely inverted. Jinx works extraordinarily hard at her craft. She demonstrates genuine engineering genius. And the result is that she can destroy buildings in a world where buildings get destroyed by cosmic events on a semi-regular basis. She's running as fast as she possibly can on a treadmill. She places above Caitlin and Graves because her destructive capacity is objectively higher. Shimmer enhancement plus Hextech-powered weaponry beats rifles, full stop. But the gap between very good at explosions, with some stolen tech and actual supernatural power, is still a canyon she can't bridge no matter how much gunpowder she packs. But if Jinx is peak augmented human destruction with zero cosmic relevance, Wait until you meet a man who turned being completely ordinary into a spectator sport, Draven. Draven is the greatest warrior in Noxus. Let that sink in for a second. In a nation that values martial strength above literally everything else, a militaristic empire built on conquest and blood, Draven clawed his way to the absolute top. He's the arena champion, the crowd favorite, the executioner who turned, killing into performance art, and none of that matters, not even a little. Here's the thing about Draven. He has no magic, no enhancements, no supernatural traits of any kind. He throws axes, very heavy, very lethal axes with exceptional skill and considerable showmanship. He is, by every measurable standard, the peak of what a human warrior can achieve through physical training alone. That's genuinely impressive. It's also completely meaningless, because Noxus doesn't just have Draven. Noxus also has Atrox, a literal world-ending demon sealed inside a sword who wants to destroy all of existence. Draven is the arena champion of a nation where an apocalypse-class entity casually exists within its borders. It's like being the world's greatest Monopoly player while a nuclear war is happening outside. Technically, you're winning. Nobody cares, and Noxus knows this. That's the brutal part. When Noxus needs to actually win wars, they deploy mages, demon-pacted warlords, and ancient horrors. Draven gets the arena, the entertainment, the human-scale spectacle that keeps the citizens happy between invasions. His entire identity is performance. He built his power on being watched, being celebrated, being the guy the crowd screams for. But gods don't clap. Void creatures don't have favorite catchphrases. The audience that made Draven relevant literally cannot exist at the scale of threats that define Runeterra. Remove the crowd, and Draven is just a very fit man throwing sharp metal at things. He ranks above Jinx because his combat skill is more refined and consistent. Axes are more precise than Bomb, but both of them are operating in the same very dangerous human tier that cosmic threats don't even register. But if Draven's problem is being a peak human with no magic, wait until you meet someone who found magic, strapped it to his arm, and is still somehow out of his depth. Ezreal. Here's where it gets interesting, because Ezreal technically has magic. He's got the Gauntlet of Nizuk, an ancient Shuriman artifact that gives him teleportation, energy projection, and magical sensing. On paper, that makes him the most powerful person on this list by a mile. There's just one problem. He barely understands the power he's sitting on. Ezreal was born with latent magical ability flowing through his veins. That's confirmed lore. But here's the thing. He never trained it, never studied it, never sat down with a single mentor to learn how to channel what he naturally has. Instead, he found a magical gauntlet in a Shuriman tomb, strapped it on, and suddenly became an adventurer. The gauntlet doesn't work independently of him. It actually taps into his own innate magic to function. But Ezreal treats it like a toy he found in a ruin, rather than a conduit for power he was literally born with. He's not a mage. He's not blessed by a god. He's a guy with raw magical potential he's never bothered to develop, pointing an ancient weapon he barely understands and calling himself a hero. And that distinction matters more than you think. The gauntlet amplifies and focuses his natural gift, but Ezreal has put zero effort into actually mastering either the artifact or his own abilities. So what happens when he faces something the gauntlet can't brute force through? What happens when raw, untrained talent isn't enough? What happens when he walks into a situation that demands actual discipline? That last one happens constantly, by the way. His lore repeatedly throws him against Shuriman Ruin Guardians and Void entities, beings that outclass what his half-understood powers can do on their best day, and he keeps walking into these situations anyway. Not because he has some secret backup plan, not because he's calculated the risk. He does it because he's curious. He finds ancient death traps interesting. That's either the bravest thing in Runeterra or the most suicidal, and honestly, it might be both. He sits at number 4 specifically because he does possess genuine innate magic, which puts him above the pure humans below him. But the thesis holds. His potential is almost entirely unrealized. Ezreal himself is just a naturally gifted kid who never did the homework, coasting on a borrowed artifact that channels talent he refuses to properly develop. There's something almost poetic about him being the closest to powered on this entire list, while still being fundamentally a person wasting his own magical birthright. But if you think an undisciplined mage playing adventurer is out of his depth, wait until you meet the champion who had access to actual innate magic and chose to strap himself into a plane instead. Corki. Every other champion on this list has an excuse. They're human. They don't have access to magic. The universe dealt them a bad hand. Corki doesn't get that excuse, because Corki is a Yordle. Let me explain why that matters. Yordles are inherently magical creatures from Bandle City, a dimension that literally bends reality. The laws of physics don't apply there. Time doesn't work right. Space folds in on itself. Every Yordle is connected to this magic by default. It's not something you earn. It's something you are. Corki looked at all of that and said, "No thanks, I'll take rivets." He strapped himself into the Reconnaissance Operations Frontline Copter, a machine originally designed by Heimerdinger and his Yordle colleagues in Piltover. Not a magical vehicle, not a Hextech-infused flying machine. A mechanical copter that runs on fuel, requires ammunition, and needs regular maintenance. In a world where magic is literally in his blood, Corki chose to become a pilot tinkering with someone else's invention. And here's where it gets genuinely absurd. Without that copter, Corki is nothing. He's a small Yordle with no special abilities, no combat training, and average strength. He has made himself entirely dependent on a machine that can run out of gas. If the copter breaks down mid-fight, he's just a tiny creature standing in a field, waiting to get stepped on. Now compare him to Heimerdinger, also a Yordle. Heimerdinger is a genius-level inventor and retains his full magical Yordle properties. He got both. He looked at the menu and ordered everything. Corki looked at the same menu and ordered a seat in somebody else's aircraft. But here's why Corki ranks at number 3 and not lower. Every human below him on this list couldn't choose to be magical. They were born without it. Corki was born with it and walked away. That's not regular powerlessness. That's self-inflicted powerlessness. He had a meaningful path to genuine cosmic ability and hopped in a cockpit instead. There's a commitment to mundanity there that honestly deserves respect. But respect doesn't equal power, and power is what we're ranking. If you think voluntarily giving up magic is bad, wait until you meet a champion whose entire existence makes even less sense. Yuumi is a cat. Not a cat deity. Not an ancient spirit wearing a cat's body. Not a shapeshifter who chose feline form for tactical advantage. She is a magical cat from Bandle City. A small, fluffy familiar who belonged to a Yordle enchantress named Nora. Inherited some of her master's magical abilities, and now has a handful of basic utility spells she barely understands how to use on her own. Let that sink in for a second. Her spells are protective wards and small, ranged magical projectiles, utility magic, support magic, spells that are specifically designed to make someone else more effective in a fight. Her entire combat function, both in-game and in lore, requires her to attach herself to another champion and ride along. She is not a warrior, she is not a mage, she is a +1, a magical accessory, a backpack that purrs. And here's the thing, her motivation isn't conquest, it isn't survival, it isn't revenge or power or cosmic duty. Yuumi wants to find her missing master Nora, eat fish, and nap comfortably inside a book. Those are her documented, canonical priorities. She is not attempting to be powerful, which is refreshingly honest, but it also makes her the most accidentally useless entity in all of Runeterra, simply by virtue of existing, and having spells she can barely wield without a partner. Now, I know exactly what some of you are thinking. Yuumi is broken. Yuumi is overpowered. Yuumi ruined my ranked games for 3 seasons straight, and you're right. In-game, Yuumi's support mechanics were genuinely game-warping, but game balance and lore power level are completely different conversations. On the lore axis, she is a small magical cat floating on a book in a world where Cho'Gath is a void horror the size of a skyscraper. The scale difference alone should end the debate. But she does have actual magic. Genuine, functional spells that she can cast independently. That's more than Seraphine can say, which is the only reason Yuumi isn't sitting at number 1. The gap between magical familiar with utility spells and meaningful threat to anything in Runeterra is enormous, and no amount of fish or naps is closing it. Speaking of which, the champion who sits below even a magic cat might surprise you. Seraphine. Seraphine is a human woman from Piltover who was born with one genuinely supernatural ability. She can hear the souls of Brackern, trapped inside Hextech crystals. That's real magic. Nobody is disputing that. But here's the thing. That is the complete list of her advantages. She has no combat training, no genetic enhancement, no weapons expertise, no defensive abilities. She was born with magical hearing and a nice singing voice. Her family had enough resources to craft her a Hextech amplifier that extends her innate powers, letting her hear the emotions and thoughts of people around her more clearly, which sounds impressive until you realize what that actually means in practice. She's not amplifying destructive force. She's amplifying empathy. The device makes her better at feeling things, not at fighting things. Ezreal's gauntlet shoots energy blasts. Seraphine's platform helps her listen harder. She has zero combat function. None. Not even the baseline I own a gun qualification that literally every other person on this list has. Garen has a sword, Jinx has bombs, Graves has a shotgun, Seraphine has vibes, but here's where it gets genuinely absurd. Seraphine is somehow positioned as a significant political figure in the Piltover-Zon conflict. She is attempting to bridge the divide between two cities locked in perpetual war. Cities filled with superhumans, chemtech monsters, and Hextech weapons. Her strategy for resolving this geopolitical crisis is to sing at it. And look, communication and empathy are genuinely admirable values. Nobody's arguing otherwise. The problem is that talking works as a strategy has a very specific failure condition, and that failure condition is the other party is a god, a void creature, or Atrox, which describes roughly half of Runeterra. Seraphine's entire approach only functions in situations where the threat can be reasoned with, and this world is not famous for its reasonable threats. The community backlash was so severe that Riot actually adjusted her lore post-release to try and justify her positioning. Can she truly commune with Brackern souls? How far does her magical hearing extend? The lore keeps shifting. What is certain is that hearing feelings doesn't stop a darkened sword from cutting you in half, and that's what earns her the #1 spot. Every other champion on this list is powerless but knows their lane. Garen leads armies. Jinx builds explosives. Graves shoots people. They're underpowered, but they're operating within their weight class. Seraphine has a genuine magical gift and a narrative role that implies she should matter cosmically. But the gift is supernatural empathy in a world that runs on supernatural violence. She's not just outgunned. She's outgunned with delusions of narrative grandeur, and that is an entirely different tier of cosmic irrelevance. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.